Have you ever looked at something that someone was eating and given them this face? Why are they eating that? Well, that's the question. Why are they eating that? Why are you eating what you eat? Why do we pick the foods that we do? Our culture, our surroundings, our environment, our experiences, our education level, our socioeconomic status, and other factors contribute to why you eat what you eat, and we're gonna break it all down as quickly as possible. The most basic reason that you eat what you eat is because you eat things that are edible. There are 5 different categories that break down foods that you're into and foods that you're not. Category 1, is it edible? If it is inedible, then it probably means you're gonna choke on it if you try to chew it and swallow it. Or it's inedible because it's poisonous. Do not go around eating things from category 1. Category 2 are foods that animals are totally down to eat, but humans are absolutely not down to eat. For example, something like liver-flavored crunchy puffs that are specifically for dogs. That is not something that humans should eat, and I know there are probably humans that do exist that would eat that, but they shouldn't. There are things that animals should eat and humans should not. Category 3 are foods that humans can technically eat, but entire cultures are not interested in it. For example, when I lived in the Philippines, a big staple there was balut, which is fertilized duck egg. There are many cultures outside of the Philippines that would not be interested in eating fertilized duck eggs. Category 4 are foods that are eaten within a culture, but there are individuals within that culture that are not interested in that food. For example, there are many cultures that love rice, but if there are people in that culture that don't love rice, then they would fit into category 4. And then finally, we get to category 5, which are foods that you actually enjoy. There are many outside influences that determine why you eat what you eat. I personally had no idea until I took a public health nutrition class that grocery stores are specifically and intentionally set up to sell you certain foods because the brands that are supplying those specific foods are paying the store to put their foods in specific sections that'll be easier for the customer to notice and be interested in. Just think about when you are checking out, when you're with the cashier. That aisle is full of candy and chips and soda and other foods that are gonna be high in the triple S's: salt, saturated fat, and sugar. This can also relate to advertisements for foods. When is the last time that you saw a sexy advertisement with a bunch of hot people passionately eating broccoli? Doesn't happen. Usually, if not always, these advertisements that are on TV, on social media, in magazines, on billboards, are going to be to cater to foods that are high in the triple S's: the saturated fat, the salt, and the sugar. And those images, whether we like it or not, are having an impact. Even if we're not consciously aware, it can subconsciously affect our eating choices and our eating patterns. Just Google food advertisements and see what images come up. It's typically going to be advertising fast foods and other foods that are high in the triple S's. Speaking of fast food, 2 other factors that influence why we eat what we eat are the double C's. I look like I'm doing the Thriller. The double C's: cost and convenience. Most people are not billionaires, and they are cognizant and they're considerate of how much the food costs that they are buying. A pet peeve that I have and that all dietitians have is when people say they can't afford to eat healthy foods because the junk food or the play foods are just so much cheaper. In my opinion, everything's expensive. All the foods are expensive. But I mean, when you compare something like a bag of baby carrots and a family-sized bag of Doritos, the carrots actually are cheaper. The carrots are gonna be like $1.50 and the Doritos are gonna be like $6. The best thing that you can do is meal prep, find out which foods are on sale, and make that food and make those meals from home. Which brings me to my next C, convenience. Who doesn't love convenience? Convenience plays a big role in why we love eating out and why we love fast food and why we love TV dinners and microwave meals. Keep in mind that those meals will add up. It's gonna be more expensive than you think. And it's, of course, gonna be high in the triple S's. And the thing about the triple S's is it's okay to have food with salt and saturated fat and sugar. But if we have too much of these things, then we are going to be putting ourselves at risk for diabetes and cancer and heart disease. And I have a low pain tolerance, so I don't want any of those diseases. And I also am an empath, so I don't want you to get those diseases either. Our next group of reasons are going to stem from psychology, from the mind. We remember what foods taste good and what foods don't. So we're more likely to gravitate towards foods that we know taste good, and we're definitely gonna avoid foods that we know we don't like. Don't cancel me for this, but I love tomatoes. I love them in all forms, raw, cooked, sauce. I love them. But a lot of people disagree with that. When I was in high school and I went to homecoming, we went to this fancy restaurant where everyone was being served the same meals, and we had a salad to start out, and everyone was all like, oh, no, they put tomatoes on my salad. And there were 20 people in my homecoming group. And I said, I'll take it from here. And I stood up and I walked to each person with my plate, and I took their tomatoes, and then it was just tomato mountain, and I loved it. That's not to say that we aren't willing to try new foods at times, but we're gonna be more willing to try those new foods if there are aspects of the food that we know we already like, and we're more likely to avoid foods if they just straight up look or smell gross, or they have aspects that we already know we don't like. The next factor that plays a role in the mind is education. So many people have not had the opportunity to be educated when it comes to basic nutritional concepts. And in order to fill the gaps, they may turn to TikTok or YouTube, and there are so many people on these platforms that don't actually have credentials. They didn't go to school for nutrition. They're just saying what they want to say. Not me, of course. I'm different. People are going to let however they've been educated influence what they eat. Another psychological reason that people may be picking certain foods is because of an eating disorder mindset. They're afraid of certain foods. They have fear of foods. Some foods are good and some foods are bad in their mind. And don't forget that anyone in any body of any gender, of any race, can have an eating disorder. You don't just have to be a really, really thin white girl. Another condition that we should be aware of is orthorexia, which is an obsession with health and with eating and with exercise to the point of it no longer being healthy. The last group of reasons that I will address are medical reasons. Perhaps your doctor or your dietitian specifically told you that there are certain foods that you should avoid. For example, in the event that you've been diagnosed with celiac disease, you need to avoid gluten. There are foods that people avoid because they know that every time they eat that food, they get a tummy ache or have other sorts of physical symptoms associated with eating certain foods. Also maybe picking specific foods because we want to prevent chronic illnesses. So we eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. We're eating high fiber food, getting foods in our diet that are high in calcium and vitamin D for our bones. That is all that I have for this video. If there are factors that I left out, please comment below so you can educate me. Eating is a really good thing, so don't forget to nourish yourself. Next time you're tempted to make that face, the face at what someone's eating, consider all the factors that determine how we choose what foods we eat. Learning can be hard, but you're here and you're doing it, and I'm so proud of you.